Hello, my name is Reverend Dr. May Elise Cannon. Today is Friday, September 13th. Today is day 343 since October 7th. This is just a reminder. I've been doing these daily updates every day since the horrors of the Hamas attacks, every day since there have been mass civilian casualties in Gaza. And I'd encourage you to use these daily updates as a reminder to know how to pray, to give us data and information, to know how to advocate with elected officials, to know how to advocate spiritually, socially, in terms of conversations in your churches, in your communities, for political advocacy and also economic advocacy. We've been saying stand in the gap, give, act, and pray. Give to organizations like ours, Churches for Middle East Peace. You can go to our website at cmep.org, give to organizations that are doing direct humanitarian access, take action by engaging in some type of advocacy, write op-eds to your newspapers, call for a permanent comprehensive ceasefire, advocate for peace, and pray. Pray for God's intervention. Might God go before us and intervene quickly on behalf of all who are suffering, especially the millions of people in Gaza. I'd encourage you to check out Churches for Middle East Peace's most recent snapshot of the humanitarian snapshot number 5 that was released on September 10th. We, alongside of a number of humanitarian agencies that are doing direct work in Gaza, they do the heavy lifting on this, but we're a part of an organization that works alongside of them, have outlined the death toll of the recent Israeli military operations, including the largest and longest incursion into the West Bank in 20 years, as well as the September 10th strike on the designated humanitarian zone in al-Mawasi, which initially reported a death toll of 40 people. That death toll was later lowered a bit, but the atrocities are still absolutely horrific. I wanted to do an overarching summary today. Most of this comes from Oxfam, one of those humanitarian agencies. They provided a lot of this information. In terms of an update on the vaccine campaign, over the last 10 days, UNICEF, the World Health Organization, and other partners began the mass polio vaccination campaign that's aimed at inoculating 640,000 children in Gaza. This is the first of 2 phases targeting central and southern Gaza. It resulted in successfully vaccinating 446,163 children, 70% of the goal. Yesterday, the vaccination campaign began in northern Gaza, where health partners aim to inoculate roughly 140,000 children over the next 3 days. Just realize if this can be done, all of these children and all of the people of Gaza can also be fed and have their healthcare needs met. This proves that humanitarian access is being intentionally limited. The overall humanitarian situation in Gaza, despite the successful campaign, the overall situation is deteriorating. In August, the quantity of humanitarian aid fell to an average of 69 humanitarian trucks per day. You'll recall the amount of trucks per day before October averaged 500 trucks a day. The amount of aid going in August was less aid at any point since November, far less than the pre-war average. Over the last 2 weeks, operational humanitarian organizations reported significant delays and denials for basic humanitarian needs: food, diapers, hygiene projects, blankets, insulin, other medication. There is active aid obstruction happening. Aid is not being allowed into Gaza at an adequate level. According to OSHA, the Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs, the number of humanitarian missions denied access by Israeli authorities has almost doubled in the month of August as compared to July. A summary of what Gaza looks like at this moment from a humanitarian perspective. The latest death toll is at least 41,084 people killed since October, 95,026 people injured at least, 1.9 million people in Gaza internally displaced multiple times. Several Oxfam staff members were displaced 7 times along with their families. Only 16 out of 35 hospitals are partially operational. When I talked to the physician I know who was there just a couple of weeks ago, he said calling these hospitals is actually really a misnomer. They're more like clinics. None of the hospitals in Gaza are fully operational. Israel issued 16 evacuation orders in the month of August, impacting hundreds of thousands of civilians. Since the start of the conflict, 87% of Gaza 87% has been under evacuation orders. The most recent was issued for parts of North Gaza, where the vaccination campaign is taking place right now. The Rafah crossing has been closed since May 7th. The Kerem Shalom has been proven to not be a viable alternative as there's active conflict there. There's a breakdown of civil order. The roads are heavily damaged. We've also talked about the fact that aid is being significantly limited in being allowed into Gaza. 83% of groundwater wells are not operational. There's 395,000 tons of solid waste accumulated, much of which is located near families that are sheltering in tents and on the street. We've heard reports that there are literally sometimes 24 people using one toilet. There's been a full electricity blackout since October 11th. All of that is just a quick summary of what's happening in Gaza. In the West Bank, since October 7th, 652 Palestinians have been killed, including in East Jerusalem. Only 18 of those deaths were killed by settlers. The vast majority of those 652 were killed by incursions from the Israeli military. On August 28th, Israeli forces launched a major operation in the West Bank with helicopters, drones, ground forces in Jenin, Tulkarem, and Tubas. At least 36 Palestinians were killed, including 8 children. The number of Palestinian children killed by live ammunition fired by Israeli forces has tripled since October 7th. 115 children killed. The number of Palestinian children killed by live ammunition fired by Israeli forces has more than doubled since October 7th. Those numbers are 1,411 compared to 615. So that includes the West Bank and Gaza, I presume. Between October 7th and September 2nd, so this is October 7th, 2023, and just September 2nd, Israeli authorities demolished, confiscated, and forced the demolition of 1,478 Palestinian structures along the West Bank, including East Jerusalem, and more than 3,477 Palestinians, including 1,485 children have been displaced. That's more than double the number when compared to the same period before October 7th. In Israel, there were 1,139 Israelis and foreign nationals killed, including at least 27 Americans and at least 3,400 people injured on October 7th. Roughly 95 Israelis and foreign nationals, some elderly and children, still remain in Hamas custody. Today in Israel, dozens of protesters are advocating for the release of hostages. They blocked the central Namir Road in Tel Aviv. Family members of hostages held in Gaza chained themselves with metal chains. Other protesters set fires in barrels, lit smoke grenades, and painted a huge yellow ribbon, a symbol of the campaign to return hostages, onto that road. Police extinguished the fires and cut the chains after about an hour. Inev Zank Gawker, whose son Meitan is a hostage, added, "We won't let the executioner," referring to Prime Minister Netanyahu, "from Gaza Street abandon Meitan and the hostages to death." He was referring to the official residence of Netanyahu in Jerusalem. "The games are over, the spins are over. The Prime Minister, look at us. We will not give up on our children." 2 Israelis who were stopped by the IDF attempting to cross the Gaza border were arrested and detained by the police for questioning, a statement added. In terms of a hostage deal, Prime Minister Netanyahu's demand for an Israeli presence in the Philadelphia corridor in South Gaza remains the main obstacle to releasing a hostage deal and a ceasefire deal, officials said, according to Haaretz. Now, the U.S. is saying that it's actually Sinwar who's the main reason the hostage deal is not being reached. Hamas leader Yahya Sinwar sent a letter to Hezbollah chief Hassan Nasrallah, thanking him for his solidarity and his attacks on Israel's north, of which they have continued. battling between Hezbollah and Israel. Fires have been started on the northern border. There have also been deaths in South Lebanon. One person was killed, 4 wounded in an Israeli attributed strike in South Lebanon in the last 24 hours. Reuters just reported that European Muslim countries have met in Spain, while looking toward Palestinian statehood as they have explored ways to end the Gaza war, calling for a clear schedule for the international community to implement a 2-state solution. And in Boston, the Associated Press reported that one person was shot during a scuffle at a pro-Israel rally in a Boston suburb. The county district attorney said an individual had come across the street and was shot by a member of the demonstrating group that was at a pro-Israel rally. So that's the update of the last 24 hours as we go into the weekend. Please continue to pray for peace. Might God go before us. In the name of Christ, amen.